All right, the purpose of this video is to explain the St. Joe's financial systems and the board responsibilities with understanding the impact of financial votes that they're making on the near-term and long-term stability of St. Joe's. So I'm recording this video. I've been on the board for 6 years, and I remember the first board meeting I went to, it was the first one or two, there was a board vote on something that was significant financially. And I had no idea what was going on. I didn't know what the impact of the vote was. I was kind of afraid to ask questions and wasn't sure whether I should be asking questions or how to vote. So I'm going to try to provide some context and training so you can make informed decisions and ask informed questions related to your job on the board. So the first thing I'll do is introduce the ISM stability markers. There's a third-party company that benchmarks a bunch of independent schools called Independent School Management. And they have, through multiple decades, have come up with a scorecarding system to basically establish an overall point value of where you stand versus other schools. And it's a really helpful benchmarking tool. They call it, they're all of these different grading things that they grade you on, stability markers, because the bottom line for independent schools is you can carry out your mission when you're stable. And if you're unstable, it's a lot more difficult to carry out the mission of the school. So one of the goals of the board is to make sure the school is stable today and is stable tomorrow and maintains a strong position and can carry out the mission today as well as for a better tomorrow, whatever tomorrow means. Two of their top 6 stability markers, they have the stability markers ranked. Number 1 and number 4 are both financial related stability markers. And you can Google those systems and get more details. This is kind of a simple diagram of after digging through and being in many meetings that I laid out. I'm kind of a visual engineering mindset person of how the financial systems work at St. Joe's. And I'm going to lay out the stability markers, and I go through a lot more details on this diagram in the full video. But basically, this is the stability markers, the 2 stability markers laid out over this overall diagram of financial systems. So I'll introduce these. Marker number 1 is actually broken into 3 parts, part 1A, 1B, and 1C. So 1A is just basically what is your cash reserves or your emergency fund as a percentage of your annual operating expenses, which occur up here in your budget. This is all the expenses that the school has. And the best you can do is 20%, and you get 7.5 points if you're 20% or higher in cash reserves. So you've got a $10 million budget. Your best score is having $10 million annual budget, having $2 million in cash reserves or higher. Part 1B is related to the endowment, and this is an endowment to debt ratio. It is important to break the debt up into 2 pots. One is debt covered by capital campaign pledges. The other debt is the debt that has to be covered by debt service from your annual operating budget. So this is the ratio, there's a typo here, of the endowment amount, which is the dollar amount in this pot here, relative to the debt amount, which is in pot number 3 here labeled. So a 10-to-1 ratio is your best score. So that would mean if you have $1 million in debt that needs to be serviced by your operating budget, you should have the best score is a $10 million or higher endowment amount in your endowment pot. Part 1C is basically the principal and interest amount paid annually as a percent of your annual operating expenses. So these are your expenses in your P&L here on the school in your operating budget, and the dollar amount that's being paid to pot number 3 debt service. The best is having 0, which means you're debt free, to 0.9%, and you get associated points with that. So those 3 things make up marker number 1, which is the number 1 stability marker across all the financial and non-financial stability markers. Marker number 4 is basically just a percentage of what percentage of your operating expenses in your budget is covered by the hard income. So hard income basically is non-donation income. So I've got the annual fund broken out here. We use the annual fund within budgeting purposes, but to get a baseline with ISM's benchmark, this should go into the cash reserves pot for the purposes of benchmarking ourselves against other schools and using the stability markers. So this marker, basically, the best you can do is having 100% or more of your expenses covered by your hard income. That means the product we're selling, which is tuition and associated fees, is covering 100% or more of our expenses. So that's how you get the highest point. So basically, the keys related to making informed decisions. These are the things that the board does related to financials that impact the stability of the school. And you can use this third-party benchmarking as a way to understand that. But these are the things that the board is responsible for with relative to financials. Some key suggestions I have is making sure to make informed decisions, recommendations coming from finance committee or wherever they're coming from, and then informed decisions on the board voting is know what are our goals with regards to stability markers. That typically comes in our strategic plan. What is our current score? What is our course? What is our trend of scores? That's helpful, particularly as we're rotating people in and out of the board every year. There's a flow of people coming in and out. Being able to see historical trends of what our scores were is very good context to say, hey, are we improving? What's our trend line? Are we improving or degrading on these scores? And then how will the vote impact the scores? So if there's a vote to spend X dollars or a vote for the budget, how is that going to impact our current score? And is that moving us towards or away from our goals? And is that impact acceptable? And there may be acceptable times when you do want to move away from the goals because of circumstances that come into play. But this is basically all about making informed decisions so you can vote with confidence or ask questions with confidence on what the financial impact is to the school. So hopefully that helps.